Thank you kindly, Governor Kolisi, reminding us that Africa is truly open to partnerships with all our peers from across the globe. And this is where we want to build up on this momentum, by hearing from several speakers who will underscore just exactly how we do that here, regarding the recommendations, the feedback, and the level of camaraderie that has been shared by B20 members, those of the past, current, and future. So this helps us build up on the mandate of B20, specifically by hearing from the various Sherpas who will join us today to help us reflect on just how we manage to ensure that we prioritize ongoing growth, a sense of continuity, and the implementation of these recommendations both in the Global South as well as peers in the Global North. I'm excited for this particular panel discussion because I do assure you our Sherpas are not meeting each other for the first time. As such, they've actually told me that they are family. So let's hear what the family dynamics are within the relationships we've been building between past, present, and future leadership of the B20. Allow me to welcome our first speaker, Constanza Negri Biasutti of Brazil, who has led Brazil's B20 2024 Secretariat. She's also helped to shape strategy, shaping global business policies, as well as inclusive growth and sustainable investment. Constanza joins us, having a seat in the far right-hand side today as a panelist and participant. Joined by our next panelist, we're joined by Gary Litman, who is incoming USA Sherpa. He also serves as the Senior Vice President for Global Initiatives at the US Chamber of Commerce. He also leads international policy, advocacy, trade, sustainability, and innovation right across the globe. Please warmly welcome Mr. Gary Litman, who will take a seat at the center. Mr. Litman, I'd like to move you slightly, just for consistency with our screen behind you. If you could have a seat in the chair to your left-hand side. Thank you, sir. And we'll wrap up by introducing a familiar face to the South African industry, one that many of us have come to engage with through business, insight, and of course feedback through his leadership of the B20 locally in South Africa. Please warmly welcome to the front of the stage, B20 Sherpa of South Africa 2025, Mr. Cas Coovadia. He's led the South African B20 with a great level of insight in driving inclusive growth, international partnership, as well as global cooperation, joining us in the center. One more time, could we please have a warm round of applause for all of our speakers? Well, thank you kindly to the Sherpas for joining me this morning, allowing us to rearrange the seating and the furniture, and perhaps the red looks good on both of us, Constanza, this morning, if there has to be a talking point on fashion. But I believe that this is a delightful conversation to have, because I can just imagine the robust themes, conversations, and levels of engagement that all three of you have had together. But perhaps before we get into those insights, Cas, to start off with you, what a year it's been. I can imagine there's amazing insight that you can tell us regarding the ongoing level of engagement and following through on the commitment that the B20 co-chairs have shared following the handover in Brazil. Just as a brief overview to set the tone, what are some of the highlights that stand out for you, other than late nights in the last year?
Okay, so look, it's been a phenomenal journey. When Mtozisi and I went to see Constanza and her team last year, around about August or so, I think it was, and Constanza and her team started briefing us, we didn't know what we were in for. I mean, it's the first time on the continent. It's the first time USA is hosting it. It's the first time that we're doing this. And so we took the view that we will learn from Brazil, and Constanza and her team were absolutely phenomenal in the handover. I mean, they basically gave us a handbook to say, do this and don't do that kind of thing. So we didn't have to reinvent any wheels. We obviously adapted it to South African and African conditions, but the handover was phenomenal. And we took the view that we're going to make mistakes along the line, but so long as we learn from the mistakes and we correct ourselves. I think we were very fortunate that, when we started this, I could count on the fingers of one hand the CEOs in South Africa that knew anything about the B20. Okay. We then got Constanza and then the president of B20 in Brazil to address a webinar of about 150 CEOs. And from then on, the support of South African business has been phenomenal. We approached critical CEOs to chair the task forces, and they all put up their hands willingly. They put in a lot of work. We raised the sponsorship we needed. And I think the decision right up front to ensure that we put Africa at the center of the B20 was the correct one. And I think what this has done is we've succeeded in putting the continent at the table of decision makers. We learned a great deal from the recommendations of the previous B20 hosts, particularly the countries in the south, because it was Indonesia, India, and Brazil. We did not go through discussions that had already happened in those B20s. We instead focused on how we actually add value to those, given that we took on the B20 in a very, very unusual time of geopolitics, so we had to factor that in. And we concentrated on how we actually make recommendations on implementation and impact. And I think that was the value add from South Africa. And so it's been a tremendous journey. I've said this time and time again. We built a team from secondees, from corporates, different corporate cultures and so on. That team has come together. It's the best team I've worked with. And so it's the team, it's the leadership, it's the support of business, it's interacting with people on the continent. And all of that has been a phenomenal experience. And then just in the task forces themselves, I mean, the participation of business leaders from all over the world, and the task force chairs managing those processes in the task forces has been a tremendous experience.
100%, both from listed and unlisted entities in a wide variety of sectors. And these are still executives who have companies to run. So they kept their day jobs while still contributing to the recommendations that they shared. So to the various task force leaders, we acknowledge you and we appreciate the feedback and interaction that you've made to the recommendations. To build up on this, Constanza, I can imagine yourself and Cas and many other participants when it comes to B20 have had very robust conversations. What's been refreshing to witness is that the focal areas of B20 Brazil and B20 South Africa have a significant level of alignment. We haven't reinvented the wheel, but as Cas has highlighted, we've taken it further in highlighting KPIs, key performance indicators, and prioritizing implementation. When you reflect on the evolution of these recommendations from Brazil to South Africa, what are your observations here?
Well, morning everyone, and thank you, Google, for the question. I think that in a certain way, the feeling that we have while we're here and while we'll be accompanying the process, that was a bit of our dream when we were leading when it was our presidency, because we were devoting a lot of efforts for that big year. So we said this cannot end up in this year. So it's about not reinventing the wheel, but now we see it happening. So I think we are very happy to see it happening in this B20 South Africa presidency, not only on content of the recommendations, like we heard yesterday, many of the things, but I think that also with a good level and degree of pragmatism, because we cannot be naive enough to think that the content of the recommendations, they will be always the same. I think that on the content side, we see looking into the implementation, but also staying relevant. The context, the external context has changed, and of course, B20 had to look into that. The internal context, looking into the first presidency of a B20 in Africa, it was also something extremely relevant. So we do see this sort of continuity and really evolution in terms of the content of the recommendations, KPIs, as we saw yesterday. But I would like to share something that is even more important, that is about the process. How did we were kidding about the family spirit, and I think that's something extremely relevant because it's about partnership. So if I would have to sum up the way in which we are looking into this process, I would use partnership, pragmatism, and priorities. So, and when we look in terms of partnership, what we are saying, and this is the way in which I think Brazil, South Africa, and the US are trying to look is beyond the formal presidency of 1 year, we as private sector, not we individuals, but the private sector would be there even if governments change. So it's a big structural opportunity that we have in terms of private sector cooperation on this B20 agenda, even though the content of the recommendation might be adjusted. So in a certain way, we are not leading anymore, but we are cooperating and we are working hand in hand and monitoring what will happen with the B20. And I think that's part of what change if we look into the previous editions of the B20.
100%. Partnership, certainly a key word that resonates with many of us here in the audience and in the room, given that that is the fundamentals of much of business and commercial activity. And perhaps, Gary, this brings me to you. You represent a plethora of organizations who have investments in multiple countries and are fundamentally US-based. In South Africa, it's well documented that there are more than 600 US-based firms. In a country like Brazil, there are more than 4,000, together with their subsidiaries, just given the sheer size of Brazil within South America. I'm quite keen to get your thoughts regarding taking over and the partnerships, especially from a commercial point of view, regarding businesses' ongoing partnership within peers and partners in the Global South.
Thank you, and it's been a pleasure and an honor to work with our South African colleagues. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is the largest business federation in the world. We have a lot of experience, and we've been involved in B20 from its inception. And we have forged tremendous friendships across all of the business federations. So we understand each other every day, every minute. We understand our members, and our job is to make sure that politicians in G20 hear consistently a very clear message from the business community. For me, South Africa's leadership was an opportunity to learn about Africa, to kind of discover it. And our conclusion is very simple, actually. The sophistication, the level of ambition, the knowledge of South African business community is incredible. So frankly, I'm coming away from this thinking that the distinction between emerging and advanced Global South and Global North is not that important. South African companies have global ambitions, just like American companies and definitely Brazilian companies. And we all are committed to the same thing, accelerating the real economic growth in our countries and through global business. So we have very, very common views, which makes, frankly, developing recommendations relatively easy. We share the same ideas and the same approach. And I think when we lead the conversation, we'll follow suit, but also recognize that G20 has come full circle, starting with us again. We've learned a lot, and we've learned how to develop recommendations in a much more precise and direct way and speak to politicians and to the larger society on behalf of business. It's been a tremendous experience.
I can imagine that it's a learning experience, new levels of partnership and ongoing camaraderie. But perhaps if we can underscore that point regarding the levels of alignment between the Global South as well as the Global North. You've mentioned something critical, that business right across the world has the same objectives.
Absolutely.
And I think that's an important one for us to underscore just in terms of the implementation of these recommendations, because that's been a key message that we've heard from B20 Brazil, B20 South Africa. How do you see the implementation of these particular recommendations in more developed markets or members of the Global North?
I think we will take the experience from conversations over the last few years with business leaders from around the world, and we will try to coordinate a very clear message to the political G20 process early in the year, because we basically know what we want thanks to South Africa's leadership, and try to insist that political leaders hear our voice and understand what they need to do to accelerate economic growth that will benefit everybody. Each country will do it in its own way. That's understandable, different starting points, different environments, but the objective is the same, that we, the private sector, the business community, work to generate wealth across generations so that we pass on to the next generation not just our debts and our headaches, but real engines of growth. And that comes from the private sector. And it's unimaginable to think that any one of our countries can grow if the rest of the world is not. So we are bound together. G20 came out of a global financial crisis. Right now, G20 is facing a shared challenge of slow growth. Again, that requires us to use our knowledge, experience, connections, to talk to politicians, give them an assignment, what they have to do, because we know what we're doing, right? We in business, we represent business. Our members are in business. They need to hear from us.
We know what business wants, and of course we want to ensure that the landscape in terms of policies and shifts is also open. And perhaps that's also a theme that I can throw to both you, Constanza, as well as Cas. Perhaps number one, looking at the partnerships that we see between emerging markets like Brazil as well as South Africa. Perhaps, Constanza, if you can just amplify some of the ongoing support that a market like Brazil might be amplifying in terms of its partnership with South Africa as a BRICS partner, but using that as well to gain more opportunities across the continent to leverage camaraderie and investment.
I think that, I don't know whether Cas will agree, but after having this type for the first time of presidency at term of the government or private sector, it's something very disruptive in terms of the way in which you do your business diplomacy internally and externally. We as Brazil at the very beginning were not very active in this forum, and leaving the empty chair, it had a high price. So we saw the change as soon as we started being more active within this forum. And after the presidency, so we have internal legacy in terms of good knowledge and qualitative knowledge for us to do lobby with the governments in terms of policy on the economic development agenda. So I do see this first part. And in terms of the emerging markets, what I see, and this happens very easily to Brazil, is that yes, in some topics will be much more aligned, so it makes a difference. There will be more voices representing the energy transition agenda, the economic development with the justice level of the discussions. But at the same time, Brazil is our main market of exports is the US. So we do, and the EU also is a strategic partner. So we do have this emerging sort of alliance, but we are very conscious that this is a global forum where we need to see different type of dynamic alliances, not only among emerging. Is extremely different from the BRICS agenda that we have. So in a certain way it works, but it's not limited to this sort of global and South agenda. It's related in some more topics, but in other ones we are having a very global and sharing positions with the US business and European business as well.
So still open to many more opportunities, and as you correctly state, leveraging all opportunities that do exist. Perhaps, Cas, if you can also reflect on, again, the Africa priority and the African agenda. The African Free Continental Area Act has been a key focus area in terms of the recommendations. We can't ignore the fact that we've got great African representation in the room, not only in terms of peers and partners from nations north of our borders, but also businesses who themselves operate in markets as close as Lesotho and as far up as Egypt, AFCA, and for our African peers and colleagues. As we continue with the business agenda, help us understand how this needs to be further explored and most importantly implemented on the back of the recommendations.
Okay, so I mean, just to follow up on Constanza's input, I think to a certain extent, the distinction between emerging and others is becoming a bit blurred. Because certainly what we've seen, and certainly my view, is that what used to be issues in the global south, like growth issues, inclusion issues, dissatisfaction amongst the populace because they're not benefiting from economic growth, are now becoming global issues. Okay, and so I think that the way we've tried to position, and I think the reason we've had agreement amongst G20 business people that Africa needs to be at the center is that they've seen the synergies between Africa's growth and development and the growth and development of the world. Okay, because Africa has the arable land, it's got the mineral resources for a new economy, it's got everything that we need to move towards a cleaner climate, it's got a useful population, and all of that, if properly leveraged and properly developed, is to the benefit of the globe. And so I think that the recommendations we've made are quite clear that if we implement those recommendations, and we will see the impact, and that impact will obviously be on the continent, but that impact will also contribute towards the challenges that the globe needs to deal with. And so I think that to a certain extent, what Trevor Manuel said yesterday, whether it's north and south or east and west, the problems are the same. And the final point I'd like to make is that more and more we need to talk about the political economy rather than the economy. Because the line between politics and economics is also becoming very blurred. And I think business, and that's why I think the B20 is such an important forum. It's the only forum where business leaders, from what you make term the North and the South, but business leaders can sit and talk about global issues and what we do about them, and how business can begin to actually interact with governments to also look at how politics influence business and the potential negative impacts of it.
100%. To close off with, I'm cognizant that we are under pressure for time, but there's key themes that you all have highlighted that I'd like us to conclude with. One thing that we're quite clear on, business is committed to their focus. Business right across the spectrum is aligned within the global north, south, east, or west. And most importantly, we're looking to leverage on these partnerships and explore on full and adequate implementation of not only these recommendations, but ongoing camaraderie in terms of investment. Business is not deterred by noise, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's the global financial crises we've seen, whether it's ongoing concerns regarding market volatility as well as significant sell-offs. But one thing that has been highlighted is the politics. In closing, your message to B20 peers, partners, and the incoming presidency to ensure that the mandate remains the same, and of course, avoiding the noise of the politics and the noise to ensure that fundamentally, outside of just recommendations, these can be implemented and investment can also follow. Constanza, let's start with you and make our way down the panel.
I think that my main message is that, of course, we will be partnership with U.S. colleagues. I think that having a government that is aligned, strictly aligned with the B20 and the G20 agenda is much easier, but I don't think that the relevance of the B20 is linked to that. So it's about us being creative enough to find what is the niche of the B20 so that it's not disconnected with the G20 on that cycle, but the relevance of our forum, as Cas was saying, it goes beyond that. So I'm sure we are going to find it out and you can count on us.
So, obviously, been speaking to Constanza, been speaking to Gary. When I was in London recently, I met the British Chamber of Industries because it looks like they're taking over in 2027. And I think it's between the four Sherpas, the previous one, the current one, the future one, and the 2027 Sherpas. I think if we can continue to share experiences, share knowledge, and get onto the same page to say that this is an important forum, irrespective of what happened in the politics, that it's an important forum to business to actually come together, work together to see what business as a united entity can do to influence politics, but also to see how business plays a role in growing inclusive economies, making sure that those economies are to the benefit of the majority of the people in this world and do business in that way. So I think, as you know, we've called ourselves the Troika, the three of us. I would like to add the following one, and I think the four Sherpas can keep in touch, work together, and take this thing forward. I think it helps.
Sounds like you've got the call a friend option for yourself, Gary, as you head into this new point of leadership for you. But your takeaway points in ensuring that business maintains its mandate and camaraderie you have from your peers.
Look, we are Sherpas. That means that we are helping ambitious people to reach their goals. And the business community in South Africa, Brazil, elsewhere is not lacking in ambition. So our job is to make sure that political leaders understand what they need to do to allow companies to pursue their business goals. And that we'll be doing that together because the business leaders share the same points of view, and as their representatives, we'll do the same. So it will be a very exciting year. We've learned a lot, and we'll keep working together.
Looking forward to it, and of course, seeing the outcomes of this level of developed camaraderie. Constanza, Cas, and Gary, thank you so much for your time. Please give them all a round of applause as they make their way off the stage.
Thank you.
Thank you.